All right, let's get right into it. Every single time you get on a plane, it doesn't matter if it's a tiny two-seater or a massive jumbo jet, there's this one hidden danger that pilots spend their entire careers training to beat. It's a critical part of aviation safety that honestly, most of us have never even thought about. But believe me, it's always there.
So, what do you think it is? When you imagine a worst case scenario in the cockpit, your mind probably jumps to a few classic ideas. But the actual leading cause of fatal accidents around the world is something way more subtle and way more deceptive. Yeah, it's not the dramatic engine failure you see in the movies. It's not even flying through a crazy thunderstorm. And look, while those things are definitely dangerous, pilots train for them constantly. No, the number one threat is something called loss of control in flight. Loss of control in flight, or LOCI for short, is, well, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's that terrifying moment when the pilot is just no longer in command of where the plane is going. And get this, it is the single deadliest thing that can happen in the air. So that brings up a really important question. What could possibly cause a pilot to lose control in the first place? And that leads us right here to a pilot's greatest threat. See, LOCI doesn't just happen out of a clear blue sky. It almost always starts with a very specific condition, something known in the aviation world as an airplane upset. So what in the world is an airplane upset? It's not just a little bit of turbulence that makes you spill your drink. It's a very specific and a very, very dangerous situation. Okay, so these numbers might seem a little technical, but they paint a really clear picture of the danger zone. We're talking about the nose of the plane pitching up more than 25 degrees or down more than 10, or the wings banking past 45 degrees. I mean, to put that into perspective, a normal airline takeoff is only about 15 degrees nose up, and a standard turn is rarely more than 30 degrees of bank. An upset pushes the aircraft way, way beyond its normal safe limits. But an upset doesn't just happen on its own. There are specific triggers. We can think of them as antagonists that can push a perfectly fine airplane into this really dangerous state. So let's take a look at the four main culprits. First up, you've got the environment. We're talking about things like severe turbulence that can literally toss a plane around, or ice building up on the wings. Then you have mechanical failures, like a flight control getting jammed. Third, there are stall-related factors, and we're going to dig into that one in just a bit. And finally, you have what might be the most complicated one of all, human factors. And tucked inside that human factors category is one of the most bizarre and terrifying things a pilot can ever face: spatial disorientation. This is the moment when a pilot's own body starts lying to them about which way is up. And the stakes here are just incredibly high. According to the FAA, more than 70% of accidents where spatial disorientation was a factor were fatal. It's an unbelievably lethal condition. Just try to imagine this. You're flying inside a cloud, so you can't see the horizon at all. Your inner ear, the very thing that gives you your sense of balance, can be totally fooled by the G-forces of flight. It might be telling you you're flying straight and level, but the instruments in front of you are screaming that you're in a steep, turning dive. In that moment, the pilot's own senses become the enemy. So, how do you fight back when your own brain is betraying you? Well, the answer is a very specialized type of training. It's designed to do just one thing: keep the pilot in control, no matter what. Now, a lot of people mix this training up with aerobatics, stunt flying, but they are completely different things. Think of aerobatics like a planned gymnastics routine. It's all about precision and performance. Upset prevention and recovery training, or UPRT, is all about survival. It's not planned. It's about how you react to something totally unexpected and how you overcome that shock and startle of a real emergency. And this quote from an FAA handbook really gets to the core of it all. In a crisis, our natural instincts are often dead wrong. Pulling back on the stick when the nose is pointed at the ground just feels right, but it can be the absolute worst thing to do. UPRT is all about overriding those dangerous instincts with intelligent, deliberate, and life-saving procedures. Okay, so a massive part of this training revolves around mastering one of the most misunderstood and dangerous situations in all of flying: the aerodynamic stall. First things first, let's bust the biggest myth out there. A stall has absolutely nothing to do with the engine quitting. An airplane can have both engines screaming at full power and still enter a stall. A stall is purely about aerodynamics. It happens when the wings simply stop creating enough lift to keep the plane in the air.
So the key concept here is something called angle of attack, or AOA. Just picture it as the angle the wing is taking a bite out of the air. If a pilot pulls the nose up too aggressively, that angle gets too steep. The air can't flow smoothly over the top of the wing anymore. It separates, lift vanishes, and the wing stalls. And this can happen at any speed, in any attitude.
So, if your wings have literally stopped flying, how on earth do you get them working again? Well, the answer is completely counterintuitive. Your instinct, your gut, is screaming at you to pull back to get the nose up. But the correct trained response is step 1, push. The pilot absolutely must push the controls forward to lower the nose and reduce that angle of attack. That is the only way to get air flowing smoothly over the wings again. Once the wings are flying, then they can roll level, add power, and recover. But you have to remember, push first. It's the golden rule. But what happens if a pilot doesn't handle a stall correctly, especially if they're a little clumsy on the rudder pedals at the same time? Well, that stall can quickly spiral into something even more dangerous, a spin. A spin is basically a stall that's gone horribly wrong. The airplane gets locked into this state of auto-rotation, just corkscrewing its way toward the ground. What's happening is that one wing is stalled even more than the other, and that imbalance is what creates this terrifying, locked-in spiral. A spin actually happens in phases. It all starts with the entry, that's a stall mixed with a little sideways skid, something pilots call yaw. Then it enters the incipient phase for a few turns as the rotation builds up. If it's not corrected, it becomes a developed spin, where all the forces are balanced and the plane is in a stable but very much descending rotation. The final phase, of course, is the recovery, and that requires a very precise set of actions. And what's so fascinating here is just how precise this has to be. There is zero guesswork. It is a memorized, drilled procedure. Pilots even have acronyms for it, like PAIR, power to idle, ailerons neutral. Then, the most important part, full rudder opposite the direction of the spin, and then a brisk push forward on the elevator to break the stall. Just like in a regular stall recovery, you have to push to get the wings flying again. And that brings us right back to this fundamental idea. Everything we've talked about, recovering from an upset, a stall, or a spin, every single one requires the pilot to actively fight their own instincts. It demands that they replace that natural, fearful reaction with a calm, deliberate, and well-trained procedure. So this all leaves us with a final thought that really applies far beyond the cockpit. When the pressure is on, when everything is going wrong, which one wins out for you? Your panicked gut reaction or your calm, practiced training? For a pilot, the answer to that question is literally the difference between life and death.